Hi, Boris.
Hello. Hey, hi, HK.
가지가 않아. 네. Hi.
Hello. Hi, hello everybody. HK, I let you do the introduction, and you let me know when I need to begin.
Yeah. So hold on a second.
No, just do the introduction you need in Korean, and I'll pick it up.
혼익분들은 다 들어오셨나요? 뭐요? 여기 신호 들어오실 분들.
네.
마이크 음성
여기
네, 저희도 준비됐습니다.
마이크 화면에 또
형님 뭐야? 난 뭐야? 난 태영. 구글로 로그인했거든. 거기 내 이름이 돼 있으니까 그런가? 이거 어떻게 해야 돼? 바꿔야 돼 영어로?
아니야.
나는 화면이 안 보이네. 우리는 어떻게 하지 보이냐?
Hello. 여보세요?
네. 네, 들립니다, 지사님.
신호분들 다 들어오셨나요?
네, 신호 준비됐습니다.
네, 들어왔습니다.
예.
안 보였어.
세안에서 들어왔고 코닉 분들도 다 들어오셨나? 들어오실 분은?
왜몇개 보이냐? 뭐야, 이거? 진짜 뭔가.
하이 보리스.
Yes.
저기 맨 왼쪽에 있는 분이 저희 본사에 에이펙 지원해 주시는 엔지니어인 보리스이고요. 오늘 교육하고 다음 주 월요일 날 교육을 담당해 주실 분입니다. 인사들 하시죠. Hi 보리스, can you introduce?
Yes,
I
of
think we
course.
can start.
Of course. Hi, hello, everybody. So, did you go through the introduction? I mean, of what you want to achieve today? Okay. So, I'm starting off the presentation. Okay, hi. I am Boris.
예, 대표님. 예.
Guys, I'm
들어왔어요.
going to put
로그인했습니다.
everybody on mute.
네, 알겠습니다.
If you want to ask something, then unmute yourself. Okay. Okay. So hi, hello everybody. I am Boris. I am the lead pre-sales engineer for Preempt in the international areas, meaning outside the US. I am based in Tel Aviv in Israel, where the company's R&D is, where the entire engineering staff is. Sorry. Okay. And I have been with Preempt from the very beginning. So I was one of the original engineers in the team. So I built this product, or at least big parts of it. And now I have switched more to the pre-sales side. So the purpose of this session is to give you a presentation of what is Preempt, where in the world of security our solution fits, and also show you a demo of the product, like a real proper live demo, how it works, what use cases it covers. And the idea is that, again, after that, you understand well what it is that we do, what kind of customers use us and what for, and also that you actually see how it works, how it feels live. So if you have questions, please just unmute yourselves, come in with questions. You can also write on the chat, and I will notice that. Okay. HK, anything more you want to say before I start? You're muted. Wait. Yeah. Sorry, I unmuted you. You unmuted yourself.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
okay.
You can start right now. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. So I will go through a few slides just to set the the basis of the discussion. Okay, and then I will switch really to our proper live demo here called Silverlaw. But I will begin here. Okay. So this is the world of IT and IT cybersecurity as we in Preempt see it. Okay, there is an on-premise network, okay, dictated by a perimeter, which is this closed network, right, internal network. This internal network has endpoints of all kinds, has users working inside of it, and also there is some extension to the internal network through a set of VPNs that allows people to work remotely. And finally, there are also SaaS tools, okay, that SaaS platforms that users can access, like Office 365, that users can access through a set of SSO or federation services that allow the domain users to go outside to these apps. And the security task of, in order to secure this entire enterprise network, the CISO, the security team, has to work with three main categories of tools. And these are static prevention tools. Static prevention tools are essentially firewalls, next generation firewalls with thousands or 10,000s of allow and block rules that segment the network on the network level, right, on like IPs and subnets, etc. There are tools to administer privileges, meaning who are the users, what are they allowed to access, what are their privileges, how do they get their privileges, who are the administrators. All of this is in this category. And finally, there are detection tools. So detection tools like SIM-based tools or various log-based tools are tools that take in data points about everything that happens in the network and produce an anomaly, an interesting anomaly, saying this was a possible credential theft or this was a possible attempt to do a lateral movement. So all of these tools, they bring in value and particular value, but they have gaps. They have gaps because they are separate. The information that they provide isn't synergetic. It doesn't work on one another. Each of them is a silo by itself. And the result is that the security team needs to operate each of them separately and without gaining enough context from each one. And this is where Preempt comes in. So our idea is to provide a system that first gives the security team visibility into who are the users, who are the endpoints, what are they doing, what are they normally doing, and what is the risk that they pose. And the risk meaning to themselves or to the network, right? Risk that they will be compromised or risk that through them somebody else will be compromised. The second thing that the system does is to detect threats as they happen. Okay, so when there is an attempt to do some sort of attack or a lateral movement, Preempt sees that and notifies the security team on that. And finally, and to us it's the most crucial part, is the ability of Preempt to actually force or enforce an action in real time based on that information. So it's not enough to just raise an alert. It is crucial that the system can proactively take action and prevent lateral movement. Okay. So this slide is about what we actually bring in, the technical components of the Preempt platform. Meaning, how do we actually do these things that I showed in the previous slide? So the first part, the main, I don't know if the main, but the first part that the Preempt platform includes is a management server. So this is just a virtual machine that is deployed in the organization on a virtualization platform, right? So it's like an image that to be deployed on VMware, can also be deployed in Azure or AWS. It's just a server. This server is deployed. It is configured with a service account, and this service account starts doing LDAP queries to the domain controllers, starts retrieving the structure of the directory, starts analyzing the GPO, and provides, based on that information, a risk overview. It starts doing a static analysis of the directory and showing various vulnerabilities, various weak configurations that exist there. Okay. In the second step, the DC sensors are installed. Okay. DC sensors, these are Windows services that are installed directly on the Active Directory servers on the domain controllers. And what they do is that they capture Active Directory network protocol data like Kerberos, NTLM, LDAP, LDAPS, RPC, RDP. So protocols that go out to the domain controllers, and these are authentication protocols. So these are protocols in which Preempt is able to see what services are users accessing, on what computers are users logging in, etc. So this basically allows Preempt to not just know the static information that is written in the directory, but also what are users actually doing. And to extend this visibility into actual user activity on premise, the Preempt management server also integrates with SSO solutions like Okta or Azure AD, or federation services like ADFS or Ping Federate. And that allows Preempt to also see what users are doing on the cloud. Okay, what the same accounts are being used when accessing SaaS applications. And both of these connections, towards the cloud or towards the on-premise activity by the sensors, it can be passive, as in Preempt just sees what happens, and it can also be active, meaning Preempt stands in the middle of the authentication and is able to block it or is able to multi-factor authentication it based on various parameters. Okay. In addition, Preempt can also intake information from various additional data sources and integrate with various tools that the customer has in order to, well, basically the customer has bought a solution, wants to use it more, Preempt integrates with those. So really the Preempt platform provides three main values. Okay, three main values, and those values are incremental, right? So the customer can first install just a management server and already benefit from this part. Okay, then deploy the sensors, then deploy the other integrations. So the first value that Preempt provides is a visibility into identity and risk insights that allows the customer, just by deploying a single management server and by setting up one service account, it allows the customer to know who are the users, who are the endpoints, what is the risk of the environment, where are their vulnerabilities, all in a continuous and automated manner. And in the second phase, when the sensors are deployed, when the SSO integrations are configured, Preempt gets not just the static information from the directory, but the actual user activity. And with the actual user activity, Preempt can understand what is the regular behavior, as well as detect threats as they happen. And finally, when those configurations, the sensors or the federation services are brought into proxy mode, Preempt can do conditional access, which allows Preempt to prevent authentications based on various parameters. We will see that live. Okay, this is everything I have in the slide. So next we move to a demo, but just before that, if there are any questions, just speak or write. Okay. Okay. Give me just a moment. I need to find something here. So this is the Preempt platform. This is a demo environment that we call Silvala. You see it here. And in Silvala, there is it's a real environment. So what we see here, this is the domains page of the system. We see that there are in this specific deployment of Preempt, there are two domains, silvala.com, simonlaw.biz. Each of them is covered by a service account called svc_preempt. You can see that each domain has actual domain controllers. And there are accounts here. So it's a real environment. And when we go here, we see that that there is network protocol data coming in. Okay. So basically, it's a proper environment configured, capturing activity done by the users with a full deployment. So the first thing that happens when installing just the Preempt management server, even just this part here, is the insights. Okay. When you deploy Preempt, after hours, this page and these pages, they start populating. They start populating with data. They start populating, in fact, with insights, with interesting data. So what you see here is an overall risk overview of the silvala.com domain. So all of these are risks that are found in the configuration of AD. Okay, just by querying that via LDAP or via GPO and analyzing them again. There are a lot of different attributes or features which can be vulnerable. Vulnerable as in the strongest configuration isn't chosen. So each of those that you see here is a risk. Okay, each of those things. And for each risk, there is an explanation. Okay, what is this particular risk about? And there are some recommended actions. Okay, and there are entities. You can always click show related entities and find out whom this risk talks about specifically. Okay, so for example, specifically this one, SMB signing. SMB signing, it's a feature that Microsoft introduced quite a lot of versions earlier, and it's meant to prevent man-in-the-middle remote code execution attacks. And servers that do not have this feature enabled are basically, well, they don't have it, so they are vulnerable to those man-in-the-middle attacks. And this is just a GPO. Okay, this is it. It's a flag in GPO. It's very easy to change, and why do those things happen? It's usually it happens because an AD admin just did a mistake, or an AD admin changed something temporarily and didn't change it back. Or really the most common is because the domain is old, and when it was created, the feature of SMB signing didn't exist. And then as the domain was upgraded through the different versions and new options were released by Microsoft, nobody actually turned them on. This is why things like that happen very commonly. And really what you see here mostly are items like that, various GPO issues or various AD attributes. Okay, like accounts with SPNs, for example. These are accounts that are vulnerable to Kerberoasting attacks, are vulnerable to password brute force. Okay, usually these are accounts like human accounts that run services under them instead of having service accounts. So suddenly you get all of this visibility, or suddenly the user gets all of this visibility, right? An account with a privileged SID, that's an account that is not an administrator account, but it effectively has all of the permissions of an admin account, although it's not in domain admins, it's not an administrators. So a set of vulnerabilities that an attacker could leverage in order to take control of the domain or move laterally in the domain. So this view, this is the overall risk, which is based again on this shows you risk factors. Each of those is a risk factor. If we go into these three tabs, like endpoints, users, privileged. So this view is centered on users or endpoints, not on specific risk factors. So for example, I go here, I see that our environment has 80 privileged accounts. I can scroll down, I can see those 80, their names and some level of information about them, their risk score, their attributes. Okay. I have, this also moves over time, so I can see changes that were done, like on June 29, there were 2 new privileged accounts added. I can click this, find out who these 2 were. I can, there are some other views here which are focused on kind of more interesting in a way attributes, like privileged accounts with weak passwords, for example. We can see that 5 of the privileged accounts have passwords that have been found to be part of big public leaks of passwords. We can see administrative accounts that haven't been used, stale, they haven't been used in a long while. Okay, so I can see that there's this account. In fact, I can click this account and see that it has never been used, right? It exists. It's an administrator. This is what the crown means. It's privileged. It has a weak password, and it actually has never been used. So maybe it can just be disabled. Maybe nobody needs it. Yep, sorry, my headphones went off for some reason. So I hope you still hear me. If you don't, let me know. And another attribute, that's stealthy admins. So other than just seeing information like this about all the accounts, we can expand a specific account. So Carol Carson appears as one of the stealthy administrators, as one of the stealthy privileged accounts here. So for any user, we can go on the About page and see more information about the account. So the question is, why does Carol Carson have the privileged badge, the crown? She isn't in domain admins and account operators. She is not part of any group like that. But when I scroll down, I can see that the user has an administrative role, which is called password controller. And the reason that the account is marked as a privileged account is because Carol Carson can reset passwords of administrators. And the meaning of this is that if Carol Carson's account was to be compromised via phishing email, then the attacker could reset the password of Jonathan Larson and then authenticate as Jonathan Larson, who is an administrator, and take control of the domain. That makes this account, Carol Carson, effectively an administrator. This is what stealthy administrator means. Okay. And the views that you can have here, we are not limited to the views which come out of the box like this. You can, in fact, create custom filters and create views which triage all of the information that Preempt has about a particular account. Okay, so you can use risk factors that we saw. You can use just organizational units or departments as they are written in Active Directory. Domains, basically everything that Preempt can tell about a particular account, a particular computer, a particular user. You can leverage risk scores and create a custom filter which is relevant for the specific organization, for a specific project, in fact. Okay, and then they can be saved as custom insights, like privileged accounts in finance department, right? Or accounts that have a weak password policy. Human accounts that have a password that never expires. All of these combinations. Okay, now note that each user has a risk score here, okay, 8.6. So for each user, it's possible to go here on the risk page and see this user has an 8.6. So why does this user have an 8.6? What does it consist of? And we can always scroll down and see the different risk factors that affect a particular account. Okay, this user has a risk of 8.6 because it has a privileged seed, SAD, in its SAD history, which is normally an indication of attack. It has a weak passwords, it has doing too much activity on the domain, it's in the watch list, etc., etc. And you can see this, it's different for each user. And you can also see it historically. Like here, the risk was low on June 15th, okay? So then the risk was different. Apparently, since June 15, in the last 2 weeks, the security of this account went down because of the risk factors that we see here. Okay, so everything or nearly everything that we have seen so far is achieved just by having a single management server installed in the organization. Okay, you bring in the management server to the organization, it repeatedly queries the LDAP, it repeatedly queries the GPOs, and it analyzes them, and it provides the level of visibility that we have seen. Questions of any kind? Okay, again, just feel free to unmute and jump in, or to write in the chat just in English so that I will understand. Okay. So in the HK, do you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go on, please.
Okay. So in the second phase, Preempt adds information about actual user activity. So far, we knew information that is derived directly from Active Directory. Here, we also gain information that comes in from sensors installed on Active Directory, like which is able to tell us when a user is logging in on what computer from which IP. SSO integrations that can tell us that a user connected to SSO. This also comes with this geographic data, because SSO has public internet IP address associated, so it can be geolocated. And we can also see information about VPN authentications done by the user through additional integrations. Okay, so basically, we see all the authentications done by the account. We also see service usages done by the account, right? So on-premise service accesses, like the user access to local web service or a local file share, okay, or in Microsoft SQL, for example. And we also see cloud apps usage done by the account. So that's through the SSO integrations. What applications, what SaaS applications did the user access? So this is an overall activity log. And the assets tab here, okay, it tells us about behavior. So in the previous page, in the previous tab, we saw everything that Amanda Hutchinson does. On this page, we see Amanda Hutchinson assets. Assets means the resources with which this account regularly interacts. Regularly means that it didn't happen one time, and that it did not happen 1,000 times in a single day. It means that Amanda Hutchinson, over time, regularly authenticates on these two endpoints, A Hutchinson DT and A Hutchinson LAPT, on different days. And this is automatic. So if tomorrow Amanda Hutchinson gets a new computer, then over time, it will automatically enter her assets, and the old computer that she has stopped using will over time be removed from Amanda Atchison assets. And the same goes for the cloud apps that she uses most often, or the on-premise destinations that she interacts with regularly. So this is basically the behavior of the user. And we will use this information later in threat detection as well as in setting up policies. Okay. So far, we have been talking about the visibility, and the visibility tells us what can go wrong. Okay, it tells us what vulnerabilities are there and where an attacker could potentially, what an attacker could potentially use in order to bridge the network. Incidents, they tell us about what has happened. They tell us about a particular activity that is in the past that has been registered and is suspicious in the eyes of Preempt, and it is recommended to investigate it further. So in these activities, we see incidents. Okay. Incidents are made up of alerts. So when I enter this incident and I see the boxes with the red with the red titles, they are alerts. And I scroll down, and alerts, they have two main types of alerts. Alerts can be behavioral, which is what we see here. A behavioral alert is based on the behavior aspect that we have just seen before with the user's assets. The behavior aspect tells us that a particular user or a particular endpoint has a set of regular associations that we witness it using. In this case, what we see here, for example, Cad Robertson's baseline is that he regularly uses C. Robertson DT and C. Robertson LAPT. But here there is an alert because Cad Robertson's credentials appeared on a different endpoint called JWriteDT, owned by a different user. And because of this, there is an alert being raised. Okay, the alert is raised because this is anomalous. This might be credential theft, and the alert is raised. Now, the problem with anomalies by themselves, so this is an anomaly, right? We say user normally does something, here the user does something different. And anomalies are unusual for a specific user, but when you multiply that by thousands of users, then anomalies happen every day, right? They are unusual for one user, but they're quite common for a full network. And the problem with this approach that classic tools have is that they generate a lot of noise, a lot of false positives. Okay, and that is the duty of the SOC team to analyze manually all of these events. So what Preempt does instead is that the reason that this was raised as an incident isn't just because there is one single anomaly here, as an incident that has a low severity, but because there are a set of anomalies. There are a set of anomalies all happening to the same user and the same computer over approximate time, right? So the user did this weird, unusual activity. Then the user failed to answer a multi-factor authentication request on time. Then 14 minutes later, the user accessed Okta, which is not typical for that account. And then 4 minutes later, the user accessed the web service on some patent file server. Again, all from the same computer. And the fact that all of these anomalies are correlated are what causes this incident to overall appear, have this severity of low, and we recommend that a security team investigates it. Okay. Plus also this mechanism of an incident, it puts the presentation of what happened in a very actionable form. Okay, we say one thing happened, then another thing happened, then another thing happened. It's like a storyline. And then the team that should be investigating it also has a very high level of clarity into what happened and what do they actually need to investigate, where do they need to go in order to figure out this event. Okay, so one type of detections that we just saw is behavioral, and it's based on activity and deviation from regular activity. Another type of alert is different. Okay, pass the hash, pass the ticket, and more. So the previous incident we saw, it had a low severity. This incident has a high severity and is called a possible compromise domain. The reason for this is because this incident is based on what we call deterministic or attack tools alerts. These are various well-known attack tools that are known in the community of cybersecurity, that are widely discussed in blogs, widely discussed in conferences. Penetration testers use them, as well as hackers. They also use them as well. And it's a set of tools like pass the hash, pass the ticket, anti-LM relay, DC sync, bloodhound, okay, Kerberoasting, etc. That well-known AD attacks, and Preempt, because Preempt is sitting on the DC and is analyzing the network protocol traffic. Preempt is effectively doing deep packet inspection on these protocols and is able to detect the signatures and the patterns of these attack tools. So in this case, when Preempt says pass the hash, it's a very strong indication that something is wrong, okay? Because it's a pass the hash. It's not just a behavioral alert where a user is doing something different. It's a strong, well-known pattern that is strongly identified with a particular attack tool. So this is the other type of detection that Preempt provides. Okay, so in this case, we can see that the Preempt administrator, Kimberly Dickinson, wrote that there is some pen testing firm that was running their tools, and those tools were caught by the Preempt tool. Okay, now, finally, the idea of this mechanism overall is to create storylines of kill chains of full attack. What happened? So in this particular incident, we can really see how it works. So the first thing that happened by an account Roger Ferguson from Roger Ferguson LAPT laptop probably, yeah, at 3:30 a.m. There was LDAP, unusual LDAP activity that looks like bloodhound reconnaissance. So basically, the laptop was infected or stolen, and the attacker leveraged the credentials to run the bloodhound tool, which maps out the network and helps build attack paths. Okay, then 1 minute later, there was an attempt to do a credential scanning or a password brute force from R. Ferguson LAPT. We see that there are many failed authentication attempts with many different users. This is the attacker just trying to go through different users and guess the password with some basic default password. Okay, then we see that the SQL admin's credentials are successfully used on this endpoint, meaning that the attacker managed successfully to guess the password of the SQL admin account as part of the credential scanning before. Okay, and then by the SQL admin account, okay, who is did some RPC calls to the DC, which is not typical for that account. Meanwhile, the severity of the incident changed from low to medium because more events have been added to the incident. It's more interesting than before. Okay? And finally, we see a golden ticket attack was done, okay? And this golden ticket, basically, it's a full compromise of the domain, and the type of the incident is changed to possible compromised domain. The severity is changed to high. So this is an example of how Preempt follows on a full kill chain storyline and provides a complete story about the breach and what happened. Okay. Questions of any kind? So we've
혹시
discussed.
질문 있으시면, sorry, 혹시 질문 있으시면은 지금 질문하시죠? 아니면 이따 끝날 때 다 하시던죠? I think go on again.
Okay. So we've discussed the visibility part of the system. We discussed the threat detection part. So the final part is the policy. Policy is where Preempt's conditional access happens. Okay, now, sorry, I just need to fix one small thing that I noticed. So 2 minutes. Okay, going back. Sure. Okay. So this is the policy page of Preempt, and in a new installation, this page is empty, which means that Preempt doesn't dictate a particular policy that all organizations must follow. Each organization has a different policy. But there are some templates. So when you click Add Rule and you open up templates, you see that the customer can start from somewhere. They don't need to like think of everything from zero. And one of the templates is called anomalous authentication. And you can also see that there is an active policy rule here called anomalous authentication, which is very similar to the template. So when I open it up, I can see that the anomalous authentication rule, it has a trigger. The trigger is called access. Access is network access, so basically a network protocol activity like Kerberos or NTLM. It has an action. The action is called identity verification. Identity verification, that's a multi-factor authentication. And it has conditions. So the conditions here say that if this is an authentication, if this network access is an authentication, and the baseline excludes a regularly used endpoint, meaning that this endpoint where the user is authenticating is not usual for the user, it's not common, and it's Kerberos or NTLM, and it's a human account, it's not a service account, and then do the action. Basically, if all the policy rules match, if all of them are true, then the action will be taken. To demonstrate this, we use a user called Edward Watson. Edward Watson, he is a patent agent in M&A department, and he has some assets. Okay, assets are computers where the account regularly authenticates. So in our demo, we see that the user uses SLVWS06. In fact, he is the owner of that machine. So as part of our demo, our user, Edward Watson, comes to the office in the morning and opens up his own workstation, right? Standard activity. So the user authenticates, does what he needs to do, and then the user, as part of his work, needs to access this server, SLVTS01. I go back to Preempt. I look at the user's assets. I see that SLVTS01 is one of the user's regular assets. So now when the user performs this remote desktop, it's standard activity. It just goes through. User does what he needs to do, signs out. Now the user wants to access a different computer, SLVTS100. Okay, SLVTS100, it does not appear here. So when the user, but it is really the user, it's not malware, it's Edward Watson. He wants to run this remote desktop. So what happens now is that the authentication goes out to Active Directory as a Kerberos request. Preempt captures that authentication, parses it, and compares it to the policy rule. And in this case, it's an unusual machine. It's a human user. It's a Kerberos authentication. So all of the policy conditions match. And because of that, the action happens, which is what you see here. Okay, so the user needs to do a multi-factor. The user can choose which multi-factor he wants to do. We support many, as you see, more than the ones here. In this case, we'll use Duo. Okay, this Duo is connected to my phone. So now on my phone, you can see in the video, I have a little prompt that tells me it looks like you or a program on your behalf requested access to SLVTS100, and I have an approve and deny button. I will click approve now. Okay, and the authentication immediately goes through. Okay, so let's discuss this scenario a little bit. We go back to the policy role. Okay, sorry, and we see that there's no username written here and there's no computer name written here. Okay, just by having this condition, the baseline condition, the regular activity condition, we were able to achieve a scenario where the user is not getting MFA for regular activity, but only, and doesn't need to always answer his phone all the time, only when Edward does something unusual. So that's one thing. The other thing that we gain here is that if we go to incidents, so incidents by default, they don't show, they only show low and above, but they're also informational incidents. And we see this activity here. We see that there was an alert called unusual use of endpoint. And you see Edward Watson's credentials were used on SLVTS100, although it's not regular for him. All the stuff we discussed that was known until now. But this alert, it has a special state. See here, auto-resolved, auto-resolved. Auto-resolved tells the security team, it tells, for your information, there was this incident, but Preempt took care of it. So you don't need to go investigate it. And Preempt took care of it because of this, because of identity verification approved, because Preempt was able in real time to contact the user and ask him, user, is this really you or is it not really you? And the user, when the user had the full context of the activity in mind, said, yes, it is me. Okay, without Preempt, the security team will have only this without the approval, and they would usually 2, 3, 4, 5 days after the fact, after July 1st, they would go and ask Edward Watson, did you do something? He would say, I don't remember. Finally, had it not been Edward Watson, had it been malware that is attempting to do lateral movement, the user on the MFA could say, deny, it's not me, and Preempt would block the authentication and the lateral movement would fail. So if we go back here to the policy role and we open it up for editing, okay, this is the same policy role that we saw. So we can see that all of the conditions can be deleted. Many new conditions can be added based on anything that Preempt can say about a specific account. Like, for example, the user's risk score can be a part of the policy condition. A user attribute, such as does the user have a weak password? the group, AD group of the computer. Okay, so everything that Preempt can tell about a user or a computer can be part of the decision to take a particular policy. The actions also, they change, right? So we saw in identity verification, there's also a block without even doing an MFA in order to prevent particular users from going to particular places. And there are also passive activities like an audit or adding a user to a watch list. So the point of this is that the Preempt policy engine allows for a lot of flexibility that can cover a lot of different use cases. For example, this rule here. Okay, so have to.
Hey,
So
Boris,
yes,
can we go back to audit and watch list for a second?
sure.
What's the difference between audit and watch list? It seems like just watching.
Okay, so audit, the action of audit, if we go here, this is the analytics tab, and you
Nice.
can see, okay, this is this is the activity that we did that matched the policy.
Mm.
So this is the policy audit log. And any match of a Preempt policy, it goes here.
Okay.
Okay, so when the action is audit, the only effect is that the policy rule match will be registered in the audit log. Right,
Okay.
this is the only thing that happens.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I think I got
watch
it.
list is something different. It is users can be added to a watch list like this, add to watch list. Okay, and then this affects how the different detection algorithms treat them, because these users become more sensitive. It's like, for example,
Okay,
a user who said that he's going to leave the job in 1 month. Maybe the organization is worried that he will try to steal some information, so they put the user in a watch list, and then Preempt becomes more sensitive to that user. So the policy action of putting a user on a watch list is just, if this specific kind of activity happened, then automatically put the user on a watch list.
All right. Understood. Thank you.
This is what it means. Okay. Okay, so to demonstrate a very different scenario, here's an example. Okay, we have a server. Okay, so this is some application, web server. Inside this is this environment. And it does some kind of SSO in the sense of it allows users to use their regular domain credentials, right, eWatson again, in order to authenticate to the application. Okay, and it's some sort of documents app. Now think that this application is hosted on a Linux box, which is not managed, it's not part of the domain, and it's a legacy application, and the company who developed it closed 10 years ago, but the organization still uses the application. And what this application does, it's actually a web server that is doing an LDAP authentication to verify the user's password. So there is no way to natively add multi-factor to this application. But with Preempt, it actually becomes possible. So we have a policy rule here that has just been disabled, and it says that if an authentication is done by a human user from the library silvala.com computer, then do an identity verification. I will enable this policy rule, and I will try this scenario again. Okay, so I got a duo, and again, because of this policy, very different use case. I again have the approve and deny buttons. I will click deny this time. Okay, and the authentication fails because I clicked deny. The Preempt sensor didn't allow it. And by the way, when I click deny, if I go on incidents, there's also a high severity incident that was generated because the user actively said, no, it's not me. Okay, so the point of this example is that it was a very different use case achieved with the same mechanism. And this really shows like some of the powers that the Preempt platform and the policy engine has. For example, like some more examples, right? You can have control over service accounts. Like for example, if a programmatic account is attempting to do a remote desktop, block it altogether. Right? Or you can say that a remote desktop to the DC, right? If the destination is a domain controller and it's a remote desktop, you have to do an identity verification and multi-factor authentication. We can have rules which are centered around ransomware protection. Okay, so when somebody is authenticating on a file server, force a multi-factor authentication. When somebody is trying to do an CIFS, an SMB to a file server, force a multi-factor authentication. When somebody is trying to access Microsoft SQL, this is MS SQL SVC, to the DB servers, again, force a multi-factor authentication. So all of these use cases. In addition, Preempt also has the capability to challenge activities done by users on the cloud as well. Okay, so here, okay, I have a policy rule, and this time the trigger of the policy rule is federated access, not access. So it's access through some federation service. And what it says is that if the user is human and it's an unusual application for the user, then do a multi-factor authentication. So in this case, I'll use a different account called Oliver Mayer. We see that Oliver Mayer comes from the other domain in this environment, from Simon Lobbies. So when we go and look at the activity of this user, we see there are no interactive domain logins. So this is a company, another company that the bigger Silverlock bought. All of them use OS 6s. They don't have an on-premise environment. They only work on the cloud through Ping Federate. And the user has some regular applications that their user uses. It's like office.com, for example. So in our scenario, what happened? Go away. In our scenario, the user is going to office.com, is entering his credentials. So office.com recognizes that the Simon Lobbies domain is federated and redirects the user to enter the password on the federation server, on the Ping Federate server. Okay, so this is the typical regular application for the account. So it just goes through, basically. Now, the user needs to go to a different application, Slack. Okay. And again, this time Slack recognizes that this is a federated domain and redirects the user. But this time the application Slack, it's not typical for the account, it doesn't appear here. Okay. So the user gets challenged. The user gets challenged with the multi-factor authentication, this time with Ping ID because of the configuration. Okay, and I got this Ping ID prompt. I will MFA it. The authentication goes through. So leveraging the very same engine, we get now control also over or the ability to challenge activities that are done on the cloud, not just on premise. and using information that only Preempt knows, like for example, the fact that the account is human, it's automatic classification done by Preempt based on on-premise factors. So Preempt allows to set a policy on the cloud based on unified understanding of what is the user doing on the cloud, on-premise, what is the risk of the user, as well as have a single policy that works across the entire organization. Okay, and all of this together is overall the idea of the Preempt conditional access. Okay, so these are the three main values of the Preempt platform. So insights, incidents, policy. Insights, that's the visibility into user identity, behavior, and risk. Incidents, that's the threat detection. And policy is the conditional access. And as you see, they all complement each other because policy is done based on the visibility and is done based on the risk score. And the threat detection is also done based on the insights as well as based on the policies, which because users can answer multi-factor and change the nature of the incidents. So it all works together to create a very complete experience that not just alerts, but is also proactive and can dictate what is done in the network. Okay. So to wrap up the demo, I'll just show a few more features which are in the system for completion, like reports. So the system allows to download and view a set of different reports, schedule them, receive them on email every, based on the configuration, once a week, once a month. Okay, that's not a good report. Let's take this report. Okay, so NTLM activities in the environment, for example. So Preempt has a wide set of reports that can be downloaded or scheduled, as well as custom reports that can be added. Threat Hunter, that's the investigative advanced search view of Preempt. So in this demo, we have been using the user Edward Watson. So here. Let's see what this user did in the last hour. Okay. So in the last hour, we see these are the low-level events that happen, that were captured by the Preempt sensors, out of which we built the higher-level alerts. Okay, so the user was doing some LDAP and Kerberos and an LDAP authentication on the library server, right? We saw that as well, and the user answered deny on some authentication. In fact, on the LDAP authentication attempt, and this is the failed LDAP authentication that we blocked, right? When I clicked deny, the user couldn't authenticate, failed to authenticate because it was blocked by Preempt. So the Threat Hunter basically provides, we did the remote desktop through. Threat Hunter provides investigative view to drill down, to go deep into what happens in the network. It has all the activities registered in the last 3 months. And it can be queried in a lot of advanced ways, right? So you can triage all of the information that Preempt knows about specific users. Again, we want to know which programmatic accounts are doing something from servers or doing interactive domain logins on servers. None, good, okay? Are doing something from workstations, we can find them. So all of these possibilities to really go deep into the low-level data that exists and is captured by Preempt. Okay. Finally, I want to have a quick view of the connectors page. So this page tells us it's about different third-party integrations with different tools that Preempt supports. So as you see, there are many different MFA providers. Right? I mentioned before that Preempt supports a lot of different MFAs, so they are here. There are different identity as a service, as these are SSO providers. Preempt can take in information from VPN about VPN authentications. Preempt can output data to SIM, any syslog, right? And also Preempt has a third-party API that other systems can query.
Okay, hello, Boris.
Yes.
Can we go back to MFA provider? You showed us just in connectors. I only see few blanks for the integration part. Is that it to integrate with other MFA providers? Is that no other processes are needed?
You says in order to set up the configuration?
Right. For example, if I want to, yes.
I mean, you also, this is everything you need to do on the side of Preempt. You also need to do something on the side of the other solution. Like on Duo, for example, you need to create this integration key and secret.
Right. Yeah, I was talking about just for Preempt side.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
The 3 blanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Guys, this is it actually. So good time for any questions about anything you might have.
I wanted to ask about the password policies. I mean, when Preempt sees weak password policies, it will raise the risk score, right?
Yes.
Other than looking at the policies of password, what else does it look related to password? Because I remember reading about integration with have I been pawned and,
Yes.
and other kind of things.
Yeah, so there are 2 separate risk factors. First, have I been pawned? It's here. Okay, so the have I been pawned dictionary is being downloaded and used. So there are 2 different risk factors. One of them, yes, one of them is called weak password.
Right.
So when I go on the user, I see the user has a weak password. And wait, let me check another one. This, for example. Okay, so the user has a weak password. And the user has a weak password. It means that the user's password has been found in a public breach. Not necessarily this user, but it means that the actual password that he uses is the same as a password that was in some public breach, which can be taken from have I been pawned. And if
does
have
that
I
mean
been
Preempt can see the password of the user?
And the hash only.
The hash. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Not the plain text password.
Okay.
And the idea is that if Preempt can match the user's password, the hash, to have I been pawned, then also an attacker can do that, right? An attacker can come, run through all the passwords until one of them is correct.
Okay.
So this is the term that we call weak password. There is another term which is partially related, which is called password policy strength, okay, which is low. And when I click the details, I see that this password, the password policy, which is effective on this user, is the overall domain password policy. And it is low because the minimum length it requires is 7 characters. So what this risk factor means, it doesn't say that the password is necessarily weak. We don't know. Maybe the password is strong. I mean, in this case, we do know, but let's go look at
yes.
Let's go look at a different user. Okay, let's look at Carol Carson. So we see her password that has not been detected as a weak password. Okay. But the password policy strength overall is low. It's a minimum of 7 characters. It means that the user might have a password of 7 characters. We don't know, but it's possible. And that not all 7 or even 8 character passwords appear in have I been pawned. Okay, there are more possibilities than the 500 million passwords in have I been pawned. But today, a PC can go through all 8 character combinations in about 2 days.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that the password is weak, but if the password is at the minimum end of the policy, and usually there will be a lot of passwords that are in the minimum, right? Then it can be brute forced.
So even the user uses, for example, 20-digit password, but the policy is very weak, you can still cause risk score to increase, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Boris?
Yes.
Can you explain one more time how to apply the MFA on web application? Which one you showed previously?
Yeah, but there were 2 web applications there. There was one local web application and there was one internet public web application. Oh shit! Sorry.
It's up to you. Anyone.
Okay. No, but the thing is that they're different. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, let me just. Sorry, I need to do something here. It's annoying. I need to fix something in the demo. Okay, so this is one way of a web application, and this is a local web application. It's right. It's internal. It's on premise. As obviously it's a web application because I get it in my browser. But in its back end there is a server that is doing an LDAP authentication. Okay, and this LDAP authentication, it goes out against the domain controller. So when it goes out against the domain controller and this policy rule is active, so we see there's an authentication done from the library silva.com server. And it's caught by the sensor, and it requires an MFA, and I again have the approve and deny, and I approve now. Okay, so that's one kind. The other kind of it is done through is done differently. It's done through a third-party integration. I didn't log out the previous time. How do I log out? Okay, so the other kind is done differently. It's done through our integration with Ping Federate. So here, okay, the first one was done from here, from the sensor. This is where we saw the LDAP authentication coming from. In this case, we are going outside to the internet, and the internet, in this case, Slack, recognizes that the domain Simon law base is federated, so it redirects the authentication to a federation service, to a federation server, in fact. And on that federation server, there is a small integration kit by Preempt, which communicates with the management in order to decide about the policy. Okay, so here it is redirected. So right, and now there will be a code on the Ping Federate server by Preempt that communicates with the management in order to decide what to do. Oh yeah, right. Okay, so this MFA. Okay, again, I got it, and this is it. Okay. In which case, that's fine.
Thank you very much. 혹시 다른 질문들 있으세요?
So for the MFA, just the two methods, right? One is third-party integration, and one is from the DC, from the AD.
Yes, I mean it covers all.
the
It
first
covers
one you
all the
saw was-
activity. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions?
질문이 혹시 지금 생각이 안 나시면은 나중에 저한테 이메일로 질문을 보내주시면은 제가 그 묶어가지고 보리스한테 다시 질의를 할게요. 그리고 다음 주 월요일날 답변 드리는 걸로 했으면 좋겠네요. Hey, Boris, I ask them if they have any question, send me email.
Okay.
I will.
Sure.
Sure to. We have a next Monday session anyway, so it should be good.
Okay.
예, 오늘 교육은 다 끝난 것 같습니다. 다 벗어나 주시고요. 제가 다음 주 월요일 세션 인비테이션은 이따가 다시 보내드리도록 하겠습니다. 수고 많이 하셨습니다.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank
네.
Boris.
Thanks, Boris.
Boris.
Okay. Thank you all. Well, goodbye.
Hey, Boris, can you stay just a second?
Sure, I will stay.
I set up the Zoom meeting for automatic recording. Can you
Yes.
save that your session in your site when you exit?
I think it saves it on the cloud of Zoom. So I'll just send you the link. It will send. I think it will send both of us an email with the link. But yes, I'll make sure that you have it.
Yeah, this is the first time, so I'm not sure.
Okay. I know. I saw it is recording. We'll see. You'll get it. We will verify that you get it. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.